My informative speech is going to be about the pros and cons of the death penalty. The first source that I have for this is taken from listverse.com. It gives 5 pros and 5 cons about the death penalty. I've heard all kinds of different things concerning it, from people saying, why ban abortion if you don't ban the death penalty? In this speech, I'm just going to list the good and bad things about this subject. The first bad thing listed in the article is that they say it doesn't teach the murderer anything. It says when someone is sent to prison, it's meant to take away their freedom to do what they want to do when they want to do it. It also says if we kill someone for killing another person, then they ultimately hadn't really learned anything. You can't really rehabilitate anyone if they're dead. The pro is it's the ultimate warning to other people. If the criminal knows that if they're caught and convicted that they'll be put to death, then maybe that'll stop them from doing it in the first place. The next con on the subject is the fact that the murder rate back in 2012 was 4.8 victims to every 100,000 people, meaning that nearly 15,000 people were murdered that year. So the threat of the death penalty didn't seem to be doing its job, the article says. If it's not serving its purpose, then it says it shouldn't be in place. The next pro from the article says that it serves as a beginning of closure for the victim's family to see the murderer put to death. It may not end with the execution of the criminal, but it does give a feeling of relief to the families that they don't have to deal with the problem anymore. The only way to do that is for the murderer to be put to death. Another con would be the hypocrisy it shows by promoting killing another human. The article says just because Ted Bundy killed 30 or more people doesn't give anyone the right to kill him. The next pro from the article talks about death being the only thing that the murderer fears, not life in prison. It took 9 years to finally put Ted Bundy to death because he tried to find every loophole in the justice system to avoid getting executed. He didn't fear life in prison, but he did fear being put to death. Next, the article says it's considered cruel to put someone to death. In the U.S., there are 5 different methods of execution. Those are lethal injection, electrocution, firing squad, hanging, and gassing. It says they're all meant to be as painless as possible, but can all have accidents. John Wayne Gacy, who also was not afraid of death, he was executed by lethal injection, yet his death didn't go as planned at all. They successfully put him to sleep. Then they used the medicine to paralyze his diaphragm successfully. It would cause asphyxiation if the next chemical was not given immediately to stop the heart, but the chemical got stuck in his tube before Gacy entered the room. It says he was unconscious and unable to breathe for several minutes while the drug's tube was changed. His death took 18 minutes instead of the usual 7. It's impossible to determine whether or not he was in great pain before he died. The next pro says that it's not always cruel to put someone to death. The incident with Gacy was only 1 out of 10 accidents since 1976 out of 1,328 executions. When the criminal is put in the electric chair, they are securely strapped with a conductor's bare metal placed around the murderer's shaved and wet head. This allows the electricity to be sent directly into the brain, shutting it off quicker than the brain can register pain. Hanging causes death by snapping the neck around the second vertebrae, which instantly shuts off the brain's ability to communicate with the rest of the body and causing the heart to stop within seconds. The firing squad is 5 men shooting high-powered rifles at the criminal's heart and instantly destroying it, which allows the person to go unconscious immediately. The gas chamber is no longer enforced because it's considered to be too cruel even for a criminal. The last con in this article says prison is like hell on earth. Think about a pedophile that rapes an infant baby girl, ultimately killing her. It says there's a there's a virtual code of honor in prison saying that inmates must kill that type of offender. Probably half of the prisoners in prison were abused as children and have a hatred for those type of people. The murdering pedophile will probably spend 10 years in prison before ever having the death penalty carried out. He'll most likely be in solitary confinement during that time. But there are holes to where other inmates can get to them at some point. And if that happens, they're usually gang raped, castrated, beaten to death, stabbed, and even beheaded before guards who may deliberately ignore it can get in to save them. Most prisoners consider each other all in the same predicament and usually treat each other fairly well. What's it like? The article says, what's it like for Zacarias Moussaoui? He was a member of the September 11th hijacking team that was caught a month before it happened. One juror saved him from the death penalty, so he spends his life now since 2006 being incarcerated for 23 hours a day in a concrete cell with 1 hour a day of exercise in a concrete empty swimming pool. He has no contact with other inmates and only rare contact with guards who say absolutely nothing to him. He sees nothing of the outside except for a tiny sliver of sky. The article says that it's like hell on earth for him, and capital punishment is an unnecessary threat. The last pro in the article says that it's the best answer for murder. Usually the justice system tries to give out punishment that fits the crime. Severe crimes require imprisonment, and petty larceny is not treated as severely as grand theft auto. So if severe yet non-lethal violence toward another is found deserving of life without parole, then why should premeditated homicide be given the same punishment? If there's no death penalty and the criminal knows and the criminal knows there's no death penalty, then why not just go ahead and kill the victim? The punishment is going to be the same either way, so what does it matter? If murder is what the criminal wants to do, then murder is what the criminal should ultimately get, according to the article. Again, that was from LizFirst.com, and it was an article from June 1st, 2013, Arguments for and Against the Death Penalty. My next source is from procon.org, and it's titled, Should the Death Penalty Be Allowed? It says that 1,436 people were executed in the United States from 1977 through May of 2016, primarily by means of lethal injection. Most death penalty cases involve the execution of murderers, although capital punishment can also be applied for treason, espionage, and other crimes. Opponents of the death penalty opponents of capital punishment says that it has no deterrent effect on crime, wrongly gives governments the power to take human life, and perpetuates social injustices by disproportionately targeting people of color and people who cannot afford good attorneys. They say lifetime jail sentences are a more severe and less expensive punishment than death. The next source that I have is from usliberals.com, and it has some statistics that I'm going to go over about number of executions in different countries and states. Texas has the highest amount of executions between 1976 and October of 2009 with 442. That's 38% of the entire country's executions. The closest behind it is Virginia with 103 and Oklahoma with 91. Missouri is down the list a ways with 67, and Arkansas, where I'm from, is way down with 27. Executions by country in 2008 saw China have the most with 1,718, while the United States only had 37 that year. In 1972, the Supreme Court effectively nullified the death penalty and converted the death sentences of numerous death row inmates to just life in prison. The Depression era in the 30s saw an all-time high in executions, which was followed by a dramatic decrease in the 50s and 60s. No executions happened in the U.S. from 1967 to 1976. In 76, the Supreme Court made another ruling stating that the capital punishment was constitutional. But from 76 to June 2009, there were 1,167 people executed in the United States. That's my informative speech on the pros and cons of the death penalty. Thank you for your time.